Hey gang, welcome back to another edition of Intuitive Angling. Thanks a lot for taking some time to watch the video and sort of dragging this morning. The boys had a slumber party at the house last night, and man, it was a late night, so sort of dragging a little bit this morning. So I wanted to get out here and do today's video. And we're going to talk about something we haven't ever talked about on the channel, and I'm going to give you guys some tips and advice on speed worming. It's a technique that a lot of people sort of they associate being with fluoride on it, but it's a great technique all over the country. It works good on about any man-made or natural lake. So I'm going to give you guys some good tips on that. And also, as far as the different type of speed worms out there, I like the Zoom Ultra Vibe myself, but there's a lot of other ones out there. So in the view products description, you'll see that little tab when you turn the video on. I'm going to put a bunch of different type of speed worms. You can check those out there, or you can get them at Baitworks. I'll include the link in the description. That's a good way to help the channel out. Okay guys, speed worming. It started out, it's been around for quite a long time, and if you're not familiar with the technique of speed worming, it's basically reeling a plastic worm pretty fast, either on the surface or just underneath the surface. Almost like fishing like a buzz bait, depending upon the worm. And it brings fish up out of cover or out of shallow water to sort of hit it like a topwater. I sort of associate it, as far as the bite on it, something like a swim jig bite. It's sort of the same type of bite. A lot of times you can see the fish blow up on it. Sometimes you can see the fish boil on it. Sometimes you just feel a strike, depending upon how deep that the bait is underneath the water. Now, the technique is sort of like got started in Florida. A lot of guys started taking, like just the Zoom speed worm type worms, like the paddle tail worm, something that's got a flapping tail, and they started throwing it in shallow vegetation around, like lily pads, shallow grass, reeds, that type of stuff, in real shallow water in Florida. And they started reeling it on a light sinker just underneath the surface. Basically because there were so many weeds down there, there's not a lot of stuff you could fish, and they started catching a lot of fish on it. But what happened is people started modifying it and using it in different parts of the country. And a friend of mine that I've had for years, his name's Jeff Coble, All-American champion, lives in North Carolina. He got me fishing this thing probably about, I'm gonna guess 25 years ago at least, in lakes like, it was Clark's Hill Lake is where he told me about the technique, where you're basically fishing it over open water and rocky banks. And I've been able to take it and do really good in a lot of different situations with it. So let's talk a little bit about, first of all, where you want to fish it. There's the speed worm is super versatile. Like I said, it'll work in natural or man-made lakes. The first place, if you got a lake that has shallow grass, which a lot of people don't, but if you are one of those lakes that have shallow grass, milfoil, hydrilla pads, whatever like that, it's really simple. You're basically going in there and just throwing it out there on an eighth ounce or 3/16 ounce sinker, usually 20-pound test line, a fairly long rod, 7.5 foot rod, keeping your rod tip high and just reeling it just an inch underneath the surface over that shallow vegetation. Same way you fish a spoon or a buzz bait or something like that. But the technique for me that has been more applicable as far as in different conditions is fishing it on the more traditional man-made lakes that don't have any grass in it. So one of the things my number one thing with a speed worming is to fish it on main lake points fast, regardless of the water clarity. I like a little bit cleaner water. I like the water visibility of over 2 foot for the most part. That 2 to 4 foot range is going to be really good. But if you guys have ever burned a spinnerbait, like waked a spinnerbait, that is the situation that a speed worm will work really good. And I've had a lot of situations like at Table Rock and Stockton Lake where I've been catching them burning a spinnerbait just an inch or so under the water, or maybe even fishing like a walking topwater. And I can go back through there with that Zoom Ultra Vibe speed worm. Usually I put it on a 3/16 ounce sinker because I can cast it further, again on the 20-pound test line, and I'll throw it out there to the bank. I'll put my boat like in 15 or 20 foot of water, and I'll burn that speed worm like an inch or two underneath the surface where I can see it coming back. I want to see it coming back. And they just come up and hit it, just like a topwater. I mean, they blast it out of the water just like a topwater. So normally what the setup that I have on it is I use the 3/16. I don't peg the sinker, and one of the things that you have to have on it is you want an offset hook. If you guys watch the videos I do, I talk a lot about using a straight shank hook and hooking it in the side of the worm, but you don't want to do that. You need to use an offset hook and hook it along the seam. So actually, let me show you real quick. I'll just show you guys how to set it up here. Okay guys, let's get into how to rig the thing here. I'll give you an example. Now I'm going to show you guys first of all what not to do. You guys, if you watch my videos a lot, you know that I prefer a straight shank hook in my worms for Texas rigging, and I rig it in the side like that, skin hook it for better hookups. You don't want to do the speed worming technique like this, because when you rig it like that, the worm will tend to roll over. So you want to have a situation where you have some type of the keel weight, and the keel weight can be produced by using an offset worm hook here. And this is about one of the few times that I use an offset hook, and I don't do it because it hooks the fish better. I do it because it makes the bait run better. So I've got Gamakatsu G-Finesse hybrid worm hook. And here's the thing that you want to remember on it, guys. When you rig the worm, you want to rig it to where the tail like this is facing up, and you want to rig that hook where it's in line with this tail like this. And what this happens is the hook will create a keel a little bit, almost just like your scag on your lower unit. When you put it in the water, it's a keel that'll make it run straight, and it's the same with this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up my hook point, with the worm running in line. Show you guys this, and then I'm going to come all the way out of the worm, because I don't want anything in the worm to impede the action. So in other words, see how my hook right here is in line with the worm at the bottom, and that keeps it running straight. And then I usually leave my hook exposed like that, unless I'm fishing some super thick weeds. That'll work a little bit better there. So the rigging on it is pretty simple with that. The main thing, guys, is just a great search bait. It's a great bait to cover water. The reason I wanted to do the video right now is it's really good in late summer and early fall. I've had the most success with this bait in like late August, early September, sometimes into the end part of September, and then again later on in the end of October, when that water temperature starts to get down, in the upper 50s, around 60. If you have clear water. Like I said, in terms of the times this bait works good, is any time that you're catching them in water visibilities of like 2 to 4 to 5 feet on a walking topwater, or ripping a spinner bait, or even a swim bait. This is the time that you want to fish a swimming worm. I'll give you, and another thing about the swimming worm, or the speed worming, swimming speed worming, whatever you want to call it, it's a really good bait under tougher fishing conditions. I'll give you guys a prime example when I did really good on this. I was fishing up at Stockton Lake, and I think it was it was mid part of September, something like that, and I was catching a lot of good fish burning spinnerbait early in the morning under low light conditions, and it was pretty windy. We had fairly thick, partly cloudy to cloudy skies, and I'd been catching some good fish up there on that spinnerbait. And then the next day I went up there, it got tougher. We lost our wind. It was bluebird skies, and I knew there was a lot of fish shallow. The water temperature didn't drop, but the conditions changed, and I couldn't get them to hit that spinnerbait. So I picked up that speed worm, and I started fishing it in the same places. I'd throw it right to the bank, and I'd burn that speed worm back just like the spinnerbait, and I started catching more fish on that speed worming technique than I had been on the spinnerbait. It's very subtle. It doesn't telegraph itself. It's completely quiet. You got a wide range of colors on the thing that you can modify with color selection. So it's a really good bait that just a lot of people don't use. And as far as colors, guys, my favorite's probably green pumpkin and watermelon. I do like to dye the tail chartreuse on them. I think that there's something about that chartreuse tail with that bait going fast through the water that will generate a lot of strikes. If you are in dirtier water, like with vegetation, sometimes like a June bug or a red bug can work good. But it's just a great technique, and it's really fun way to fish, because Like I said, most of the time you're going to see the fish boil on it or blow up on it. It's really cool. So give it a try, guys. Get you some speed worms, some of your offset hooks, the G-Finesse Gamakatsus, and go give it a try. You guys will have a new technique out there if you guys never used it before. So talk to y'all later. See you.